Hello and welcome to the return of Mitten Backstage. Thanks so much for joining with us and for bearing with me that an episode didn't come out last week. I literally had a week full of 14-hour plus days between being in the studio with Earth Radio and our guest producer, Paul Clemson, as well as a couple of farewell shows for our drummer, Madison, who's going to be living in Nashville. And I worked the African American Arts and Music Festival on Saturday with the only break during the day happening because I accompanied a spoken word poet at Art Prize, which is happening right now in Grand Rapids. So I appreciate any of you who were expecting an episode and it didn't drop. I appreciate your patience with all of this. And it's good to be back. I'm chatting today with Ben Steer. He is a bass player who has recently made the shift back to being a full-time musician. So he is playing with a few different groups like the Hackey Turtles. You've probably seen him with Melophobix this summer. He plays in Bedroom Ceilings with, so many projects in and around the West Michigan area. He is also focusing on his own personal music this fall and winter. So we chat a little bit about artistry and, how we're both kind of in the studio session musicians, but how we think about, art we want to produce or artists that we work with. And we just, catch up because it's been a busy gigging season and we don't always run into people when all of the musicians are on gigs. So it was a nice chat. If you liked today's episode and want to support the podcasting efforts that I do, you can head on over to patreon.com/Tracy Snedeker. There you can contribute at different tier levels to get early access to all of the podcast episodes in audio and video format, as well as exclusive merch and more. You can also go to DutcherSnedeker.com to see everything else that I'm currently up to around the internet. And if you dug any of the stuff you listen to or watch, depending on the platform you're listening or watching this on, feel free to follow, rate, review, subscribe, like. There's so many ways to push the content out into the algorithmic universe. And, it helps. Every little bit of interaction, whether you leave a comment or a thumbs up or, just share it to your own personal socials. All of those things help the content as well. All right, let's get into today's conversation with Ben Steer. Can you say that again?
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's been chill and fun. But how's you just, if I remember right, you said you're going into full-time music, or was that?
I am.
Yeah.
I am now in full-time music.
Nice.
And so far what that means is mostly just that excuse me. It mostly just means that I'm not, I don't have another job. And the only job that I have right now is playing concerts, essentially, because that's the only principal income that I have from being a musician.
Right.
I would like to explore more ways to make money, and I'm getting a little bit into that. I have a couple of people that want to be bass students, but I've never taught before. So that's an obstacle in its own, is that I need to learn how to teach if I want to do that. And as it is, I can't really expect very much money from streaming royalties.
Yep.
Or anything like that. And there's some other more creative ways I think I could do, but shows are still very much happening, and there's a few more that I've got to play this month and a few in October that are gonna keep me busy.
Yeah. Is it mainly with a handful of bands, or are you kind of gun for hiring it also?
There's the only for hire thing that has really been kind of spur of the moment outside of my regular bands is just this wedding that I played last week. but that ended up being like a really fun wedding anyway. And I will get into more of that next year. I'm hoping that I can play in some like cover bands and things like that are going to do the thing, like play 3 hours at the score and make a certain amount of money here and there. Like it's not what I would love to be doing all the time, but I used to have kind of like a distaste for the idea of a cover band or a wedding band, just because it's not the real deal, man.
Right.
It's not, but in a way it is still the real deal. I still get, I mean, it's still a concert. I still get paid to play the bass, and that's pretty much that's as good as it gets right now.
Yeah,
I'm into that.
I'm as burnt out as I was from the Blue Water King schedule I had this year. It was pretty cool to have it was like a combined way of like catching up with a lot of musicians I hadn't seen in a year, and then having that income coming in to like, I signed, I'm coming up on a year of having an office at Third Coast, and so that's like added to my expenses each month. And to have something that's like, oh yeah, I can do 2 weekends of weddings and cover like everything, and then everything else is just like whatever I want to add to it, or things I want to do during the week. Which, yeah, you could probably get on the Blue Water Kings roster just from knowing a lot of covers and stuff.
I would love to. I'm kind of trying to make that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend recently about this idea of my friend. He's an artist. He's a visual artist. And so he has like his own like painting studio. And we were talking about the idea of like, being a visual artist, being a musical artist, and how there is a product that people want you to make.
Yes.
And that product might not be what it is that inspires you. Right. But sometimes you still like have to do that. But then there also comes like a threshold where you're able to say as an artist, no, this is me, this is my art, and this is what I want to do. And it really doesn't matter whether or not you approve of that,
right?
Because this is I want to, this is what I need to do. And I haven't been doing so much of the I need to do this in a couple of years, because I haven't been in a band that I'm leading the creativity in almost, we're trying 3 years now.
Wow. Yeah.
Coming up in October here is the 3-year anniversary of the Zannies last concert.
Oh, right.
And that was kind of like my last, that was the last project that I was a part of that I really would say was like, this is Ben's music,
Right.
And I have a lot of creative control in like bedroom ceilings, for instance, but those are not my lyrics, and generally speaking, they're not my songs.
Right.
I come up with my own parts and arrangements and things like that, but I'm not sending a message out to somebody in a piece of music. And so we were chatting about this idea of like, I need to create the art that I want to make that makes me feel like I'm, whenever I complete a song and I release it, I feel like it's like this like little like piece of me, this like piece of art that I've completed, and I've said, this is it, it's done. Now on to the next piece of art. And I want to be able to start doing that. But how do you make the money that allows you to create the piece of art that is like that, and I have to spend so much time doing this piece of art, which in the process costs money, costs a lot of money to make. And then after the product is done, it just might not make any money.
Yes.
There's a great chance that what I'm spending like the next few months of my life doing, recording original music, is just not going to pay off in a financial way. So how so I have to spend time making money so that I can not make any money, and then not make any money from what I don't know. It's very, there's a dice roll involved.
Yeah, that reminds me of Kevin DePree. I don't know if you ever met him when he was in Michigan. He played in Brenna, and he had a solo project called Sound is Red that would do like, he kind of dressed up like a, he would wear a suit and a motorcycle helmet, so it was like a Daft Punk-esque looking thing, and he would live drum and trigger lights and loops and electronics and stuff. And he kind of rolled that into an educational grant for STEAM instead of just STEM. He added arts into STEM, and would do some school visits and stuff. But he got really big into sync licensing, and him and his wife live in Glendale now. They bought a house out there, and he posted basically the letter he drafted to the unemployment office in California, and was like, hey, like this, like being a musician, you need that time to make a thing, and you don't even know when that thing gets made what it will lead to. Like, you'll build new skills, you'll put out a product, but it's not like you going to a job and you have like, oh, I input 8 hours of work that affects the company this way, I go home, do it again for a few hundred more days a year, and it's like a measurable track thing. It's like you could spend, like someone like Charles Bradley didn't get any like mainstream fame until his 60s. And that was like after years of just being a James Brown impersonator. And and then there's other people like the Schultz family that lives in Michigan, where those kids have been playing since they could barely walk, and they their dad had connections in kind of the gospel crossover space and was able to build a story around them, and over the years, and like now they're Justin Schultz was just at the Life is Beautiful event that Jacob Collier put together. So
Jacob Collier did that?
Yeah, it was a jam card event that Jacob Collier was asked to like put together a concert, and so his band played, but then like it was like, oh, Eric Moore is on drums, and Steve Vai is a guest artist, and Justin Schultz and T-Pain, and like just put everybody on this concert.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's like there's no linear path to anything in music, really. Like there's linear in terms of like skills, and like maybe on the music business end, if you're like working up a if you're at like a label or like a like Live Nation or something. But
yeah,
so much of it is just like I'm building the thing, I'm gonna get better at stuff along the way, the thing will come out, it'll either be received or not. Or like maybe it'll be received 5 years later. Like I remember.
Hopefully that sounds ideal.
Yeah,
that sounds. I'm told that you're supposed to be 5 years ahead of your time in order to make something that's truly it. If you want to be that like influential, and if you want to like be trendy, you kind of have to be like really ahead of the time, because by the time you make the money, get the thing, the album, the recording, the piece of art, and then you distribute that, and then the time that it takes for the world to acknowledge that any of that has even happened, that's a whole nother leg of this of this race that is just dedicated to letting people know, if you're not already popular, and if you don't have the media like paying attention to you, and a label like pushing your music to writers and things like that, there's this whole leg of like, this is me, it's mine.
This is what I'm doing.
Listen to it.
Yeah, please just buy it. Yeah. It will, and so much of it, like so much of how I feel like my trajectory as an artist has been, I like came up in, like taking lessons, competing a little bit, doing the music camps, unintentionally being like involved in a lot of the spaces that you can't be as a middle schooler and high schooler and in the church scene. And then when college hit, it was like, I was having people who were, 2-3 years ahead of me being like, how are you getting gigs? And I'm like, what? You're about to graduate and you've never like got like tried to get a gig or put a band together, or like even a recital. Like if they're like not in a band, like if they're a flute player, like you haven't programmed music outside of school or something. Like so it's interesting hearing, like, I don't know, some people who, like someone like Galen Bundy, who's like, you barely see him, but when he's out there, that's his sound, because it's like, oh, this sounds like, if Monk was in a doom metal band, like that. Nobody else is doing that, and it leaves an impression. But you're not going to see Galen Bundy like you'll see him at NAMM. He was at Summer NAMM this year, but you won't see him like making this like very public effort to be like, look at my face, look at me, right. I'm the front man. It's like he's just that's his artistry, versus a singer that might like work with producers and then make a band and then put out a few different, like Madeline Grant did before she moved to LA. She was a Detroit singer that I met in the Blue Water Kings circuit, and she, in like a year and a half, just like, or maybe it was just 2 years, but she was a featured singer on a song with Odessa, FKJ, Gary Pockets, and like a couple other like great placements for a singer. And she would DJ last year during quarantine, so there's that skill set too of like, oh, she can go to one of a million like club restaurant places in LA and just do her DJ thing on the side and like continue to network and do stuff as a singer. So yeah, it's like there's ways to like like networking and be good at your instrument or be good at your artistry, whatever that looks like. But there's no it's success is, I don't know, subjective and fluid, and it adapts, and
it's wild. It's like some days I think I want to just like take off and do like a basement tour and just make like absolutely no money and but just play like some like really like grimy, aggressive private concerts that I feel like are really like inspirational to a lot of the people that I want to like spread my music to. But like I would also like love to play on Saturday Night Live. Like that sounds good. It sounds great.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. For a weekend.
Yeah. And I think of like, I always remind myself how fortunate on my dad's side of the family, all my uncles are musicians. So I have a lot of examples of one's a horn professor at a college, another's a symphony oboe player, and others a, kind of a jack of all trades, teacher, cellist, jazz pianist, engineer, and composer. And what seems to be the through line between all of them is like they have their main gig, the thing that they've worked hard to get to, and they enjoy that as like, oh, this earns me money, I can support my family, I do get other opportunities through it. But then they also have their side ventures, like the horn professor uncle also can teach math, and the symphony oboe player is an educator, and the jack of all trades guy, he's able to like, if he wants to focus on writing for the dance company he works with and travel with them, he can do that. If he wants to play more cello with his like acoustic trio, he can do that. Like it seems like building skills and being flexible is like the trajectory thing, I guess.
It does seem that way. Yeah. It's easy to like idealize the idea of becoming famous
Right.
as a way to like only because if you really want to like get that like making money from one thing,
Yeah.
you kind of have to be like really popular,
Yep.
or it like somehow get people to pay a lot of money to watch you perform if you only want to do that thing. And that
Yeah.
seems like ideal for a lot of people, but also kind of not that interesting, honestly.
Yeah.
Like
I would.
not hugely interested in just being in one band that gets me a lot of traction and a lot of attention. I don't know that, like, yes, I want my art to like have its time. I
Yep.
absolutely do. But do I want 30 years down the road to be playing my hit songs that I recorded, like in this year, next year? Am
Yeah.
I gonna want to do that? Is that a path? I mean, it absolutely is. I just saw Primus.
Oh, nice.
I just saw Primus do the Rush tribute in Chicago. And Les Claypool's like, he's totally like he's like an idol. He's a complete idol for bass players and for alternative rock people who want to make weird music. They're like, there's a chance.
It's
if
him.
Primus can do it. Primus makes music that sounds downright ugly.
Yep.
Sometimes, like on purpose. And people love it. And
Yep.
And so that's hugely inspirational to me. But I watch him play Tommy the Cat, right? And it was amazing. It was an excellent live experience. And I heard some songs that were really, really old that were, like Tommy the Cat, for instance, was released in 1991. Which is 30 years ago.
Yes. Long time ago.
And I know that he was writing and playing that song for a couple of years, at least before that was on an album. And just watching him like deliver that song with just as much energy and gusto and passion and aggression as he has every single time he's ever played that song, like for that many years. Like it's a career. Like it's just really impressive to watch that, to watch that experience, and then just wonder like, what would I be able to do that? Would I be able to sell that song 30 years down the road?
Right. Yeah. Would I be able to get on a stage and like find that initial spark or emotion or thing that like drove me to write and perform this song when it first came out, when I'm a completely different person?
I guess that helps when you have the same two guys that you're playing with.
Yeah.
Like it's still Les Claypool, Tim Alexander, and Larry Lalonde. That's the band. And then for a little while there was Jay on the drums, but now it's just Tim Alexander, and you just have the band. It's amazing. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I think of like my friend is on tour with Blue October right now, and she grew up listening to that band, and a lot of those I think a lot of those members are still in that band that originally made the band. And she, eventually I want to have her on the podcast, but we've just been messaging. And I see her posts about like, oh yeah, the crew's really great. Like everyone is like, it's like just one big, like, joke fest and family, and like people support each other. And I'm like, that's at least a good goal for like, if you have a tune that like does hit that spark and like people want to hear it at everything, like finding a way to keep the dynamic of the band strong, so that if you have to go back in your catalog and dig up a song you might not play unless it's by request, like you're still having fun with it. Or like I think a band like being in Earth Radio, part of our live stuff that we try to do is, we try to change up something in the song to keep it fresh. Whether it's like adding a harmony or like even recently with the song Mother's Breath, there's the piano riff that Hannah wrote that's at the end of the tune, and we usually just kind of build it out and then let the percussionists go crazy. And in the last 2 shows, we've made it into like an Afrobeat flavor. And I'm like, oh, now we have access to this, vocabulary and like this type of interaction. And like, this is way more conducive for a percussion player. Like just those little changes helped make that a different experience than even just, a couple months ago when we played it.
Yeah. The collaborative aspect and like that, I love the evolution of the song in the live setting, because it always does kind of like change a little bit how you play the song in the live setting.
Yep.
And that can be adding the harmony, adding something that wasn't there before, changing your tone, changing the tempo or the groove, like you say, like changing it to an Afrobeat song or changing it to something more Latin, or like in the Hackey Turtles, we call it like a coffee house version. If we do it kind of like we do it like laid back, chilled out with like acoustic guitars, that's like the coffee house version. But then and you can do that and you can still make it like interesting for yourself and interesting for the audience, or you can just play the same song the same way, the exact same way for 30 years. You can do that, and a lot of times people want you to do that.
Yep.
And like Tommy the Cat is the same song. The only thing that was different was that they did mashups. Primus did mashups of their hits, right? So it was like Jerry was a race car driver into My Name is Mud, back into Jerry was a race car driver, and then Tommy the Cat is like after that. It's like, and then it's got its own thing. But either way, I think it comes down to the players.
Yep.
Because if you're not like if you're in that band and if you're jamming with your players like every time, you're probably gonna have a good time. If you like playing with those people and you like what you get straight out the gate, like, and you all kind of agree, like, I don't know, like, do I get bored on stage sometimes, like playing the same music over and over? Yeah, like a little bit. But if I have people around me that are engaged and I'm engaged in the music, then that like makes all the difference. Because there were times when I was in the Zannies when we would kind of play like a similar set list all the time. And then there would be these conversations of like, well, how do we spice things up, right? How do we make this a more interesting experience for the audience? But really what we were saying is, how do we make this more interesting for ourselves? Because we're bored, we're tired of it.
Yeah.
Right? Because the audience, ideally, say we're playing in a new city, the audience is entirely new. And so if you play the same set list in 5 different cities, it's going to be a new experience every time for those audience members. But
right.
It's always new music to people who have never heard it. So you can just do that and play that and sell that set, right? And I think that's a pretty smart way to do it. If you're doing like a big production, doing a tour, and you just want to do the same show, go ahead, just do the same show. It works, and then everybody's going to be really tight and just like know everything.
Yeah, that being in the studio with PK, Paul Clemson last week, he was talking, he would just drop stories about his experience, because he's worked with, it feels like everybody. It just seems one of those like omnipresent dudes that you're like, were you in this? Like he was talking about like everyone from, the Soulquarians, like the Badu roots, all that stuff, to like the I don't know, like, Jill Scott, Alicia Keys. But he brought up Justin Timberlake as someone who runs a show almost like paranoidically specific, like almost superstitiously specific. Like it's got to have like, like down to like the clothes and like, it's mapped out like a musical almost, where like, here's the script, here's, change the city word, change these things, when I do this, walk up to the front and do this turn, this clicks. All the scenes, there was like over 100 scenes on the board for the whole show. Wow. So you're like, having all these cues but on the one hand, it's like, okay, so exactly what needs to happen and how to course correct if something goes weird because there's a template. But then, it might, as a crew person, you might get burnt out just being like, all right, I'm doing this literally the exact same thing every day.
I appreciate the idea of like of musical theater. I think that that's a great comparison because it's having been involved in like some musical projects, some musical theater when I was a little bit younger. It just makes, obviously there's a narrative and there's a story that you have to tell and there's lines and there's the script. And so that all like makes sense. Like you should say the same thing so that, because there's a story that you want to keep, right?
Right.
And it can be the same in a piece of music. You might not say the exact same word. You can improvise a little bit, and people allow that in theater from time to time as well. But the story like remains the same.
Yep.
And I just think it can be hugely advantageous if you're talking about a production that involves, in musical theater, your chorus alone can be 50 people.
Yep.
And then you have leads. Then you have like 10 leads and things like that. And you have the pit, right?
Yep.
Now, in the context of like a band and you have 4 people, do you need a script?
Right.
If there's just like 4 people and you all play together and you've all done it a whole bunch of times, probably not. You probably don't need that. But if you had like 10 people and not all those people are musicians, and some of those people are dancers, for instance, the people that take different types of cues, maybe you would need something like that. And that's kind of like that's kind of more the production value that I would like to explore in my own creative projects, like moving forward.
Yeah. And well, and I always, I think about like, definitely younger, I had that thought of like, I only have to do I have to do original music. And that's kind of what has helped me be able to invest so much time and energy in Earth Radio, is that I've spent a lot of time, figuring out how to stay consistent with that type of work. But I also see the value of like with Blue Water Kings, like you're going to get a lot of the same tunes, and that helps, make up for the fact that it's not like a fixed band with rehearsals. It's like, hey, the band leader is going to send out a set list during the week. You just double check it against the tunes you played, learn the ones there's probably going to be some requests for the ceremony or for the or like the first dances
dance,
and and it's like, figure it out and you'll add that to your arsenal. And it builds a different set of skills that can transfer. Because I do, there's, I'm about to do another musical with West Shore Community College in January, February. And that's, I kind of get hired as like the rehearsal pianist, but also kind of like a music director of sorts, like working with the theater director and the band director to kind of sync up like, oh, here's what we ran in rehearsal, here's what we're adjusting at this part, get everyone on the same page. And it's nice to like, sink into that for a couple months which is about all I feel like I can max out on with musicals sometimes. It's like, all right, I've spent like in 2020 before the shutdown, it was 2 months of ABBA for Mamma Mia.
Oh, no.
So it's just like, all right, I'm in these songs for 2 months and I'm never going to listen to them again after this.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm really into that. I'm really into that idea of the long production setup before the performance, before the tour. That sounds really interesting to me. And I've never been able to do that.
mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's hard to get people interested if what you're doing is just rehearsing for something that is not yet a live project or a live experience. So the question is like, I have this music that I want to perform. And so do I perform the music to make the money, to record the album, to do the album release tour, or do I just record the album right from the get?
Yeah.
And then figure out exactly what I want before, and then just release the music and then tour the music.
Yep.
Like that's kind of like, it's just a lot. It's just a much bigger investment up front.
Yeah. Well, and I think, just brought a quick thought of this, this past week recording, we have like 5 tunes for this new Earth Radio release that each one's, close to 6 minutes or over. And, this is the earliest in the process of recording we've done for a record since our first one. Like the first one we recorded like end of August, early September. And to have, a lot of the record realized in 3 days in terms of like tracking and overdubs, like we're going to start doing mixing next week. And if we can get the album like, at a like done at a comfortable pace where we all feel good on the same page and can like have a good product ready before the end of the year, that gives us a good chunk of time to like start, like what's the artwork going to look like? How do we match it aesthetically with our promo? Let's get our tour stuff lined up, get everything ready to announce like for the first time, like finally having like everything kind of domino into each other instead of like, it's like, oh yeah, the album's here and it's right there and we're playing these 5 shows. I forgot to mention that. And the single came out, I guess. Like, just
like next week. Yeah, you just drop a record and then you say, we're playing 5 shows starting today.
Yeah.
I need to give people a little more time. I need to I used to be a little antsy, right? Like feeling like feeling like I like had to release music. I have to. It's that's what the people, they're waiting for it. They're clamoring. They can't be satiated. My listeners, they can't, like, I'm not giving them enough material. And the reality is, nobody cares that much. They just don't. They really don't. And there might be a few people out there that are like really, really just dying to like see more music from your band.
Yep.
And stuff like that. But like life goes on. And if you don't release the album this year, or if you don't, like I'm completely over the idea of like, well, it needs to be finished by a deadline. And if I'm not totally happy with it, I'm just going to put it out anyway, because I said that I would.
Right.
And I'm over that. I'm totally over that. It's like, no, it's going to be done when it's done. And I'm not going to release it if I'm not happy with it.
Right.
Because I am investing so much time into this product that it has to make it should make me happy, right? It should, like a little, it should, I shouldn't, I'm not going to settle for something that's not what I wanted to release. And I'm a big believer in like the take.
Right.
I'm a big believer in that. And I've come to realize over the years of recording that like if I don't like that sound going into the board of the recording studio, I'm probably not going to like it on the other side either.
Yeah.
No matter how much post-production and correction you can do to something, like if I don't like how that drum sounds, I'm probably not going to like how it sounds later. And I have to do something about that.
Yeah, I think
And
people.
that might mean throwing something away,
Yeah,
or it might mean redoing something entirely, and that's fine.
yeah. Well, and thinking of that process, I feel like a lot of studio musician or people going into a studio, I guess in general, they don't realize like so much emphasis is put on like, oh yeah, we have an engineer, he's gonna mix it and master it, and it's gonna be amazing. It's like
It's
you
going to make
could
us sound great.
yeah, it's like you could literally have like a killer foundation just by spending a little time picking out the right sounds, even just recording individually versus as a band, like the difference in the energy of the
Yeah.
recording, like all those things that you don't need an engineer right away for. Like, oh, if you just like with the Earth Radio stuff, we spent a couple months like at rehearsals shaping these tunes, and we only played out like one of those songs live, but well, I guess two of them we reworked, one of Hannah's, but the it's not like we were like playing every song out all the time. It was mostly in like rehearsals, like running through stuff, stopping, being like, oh, how can we make this part more cool? Oh, let's try this. No, let's try this one. Let's try, maybe it's a layer. Like, what if we added vocals? Oh, it'd be cool that, like, just brainstorming
Yeah.
versus like, sitting there being like, this bass doesn't sound good. Do you have a bass tone
Yeah.
better plugin?
Do you have a bass? Yeah, a bass make better.
A make better plugin.
A make better plugin. Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, got it on sale.
Yeah, it's a Sound Toys plugin. They're called the Make Better knob.
I love yeah, and I don't know, at rehearsal is a perfect time to do that. That's a perfect time to, if you're rehearsing for the record, it's a perfect time to experiment with the sound and experiment with the tunes before you get to the studio, because you should kind of figure out, like, I don't know, unless you have like such a specific idea of your music, you might want your other members to kind of come up with some ideas that might work and they might not work. And it's always better to figure out if they don't work before you get to the studio, because then, and if you don't, you're kind of wasting precious time.
Yeah.
You're not only wasting time of like the musicians, but also the engineers, but just basically the time in the studio. So if you already kind of have an idea of like, well, we thought about that, we tried it, and
Right.
it didn't land. So
Yeah.
we're going with something else.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I appreciated, partially because we only had 3 days in the studio to track, and Madison, he's now moved to Nashville. So we had a limited time left with the dude who's been rehearsing with the band for months. The way the session flowed felt really good, because it gave, like we were able to do a lot of stuff all together. And then there are times where I could step back, where Madison could step back, where Hannah could step back and let, like, oh, we have Kevin, Justin, and PK as kind of the main producer voices, with Hannah's input, obviously, with a lot of her songs and vocals and other effects and ideas she had. But it gave space for us to like, oh, we can all come together, work on something. It's not too many voices and ideas flying around. There's at least some unified, goal with somebody's suggestion. But then it also gave us time, like, oh, they're focusing on vocals right now. I don't really need to be in the room, because the vocalists will micromanage the vocals more than me, but I will come in once they start tracking and just, lend another ear of like, oh, I think the middle voice is a little flat. Like, let's isolate that for a second, just double check it. Or, it's like, oh, let's, try this out, just making sure that I'm there when I need to be, but then not always there, bogging things down with like, if there's already a good flow, it's like, yeah, this is feeling natural. I don't need to like force in some idea or thing that's not really going to be conducive to the flow of it.
I imagine that with Earth Radio, there can be a little bit of a too many cooks in the kitchen type thing happening sometimes. And there's
Yeah.
just a lot of ideas flying around.
And resolved, like, as much input as I do try to give, I understand that the main songwriters, like, I contribute some songs, but the main ones are Hannah and Justin. So I'm going to use my vocabulary and experience to do, like, to execute ideas they might have, but also save time in the studio. um it's not so much about, like, what should I play. It's more of like, all right, jump on the Rhodes and do stuff, jump on the organ and do stuff, jump on the piano. And then it's not just me being like, well, what should I do? It's like, nope, they're hitting record, I'll just play. If they like an idea, they'll tell me, I'll build off of it.
Yeah.
Rather than me trying to activate, like, a classical brain and being like, let's write out parts and have very specific, like, goals. Because that's
Yeah.
not how the band operates. It's a lot of organic, on the moment spontaneity, or like, oh, I liked what you did. Like, I did an overdub on a track with piano, and I was just doing a little catchy lick, and Justin ended up liking the catchy lick that I just did. It was like a couple notes with, and just octaves. And he ended up taking that, and we, like, recorded it to Hannah's sampler, and then let David rhythmically, like, manipulate the sample in the texture. And it was like, yeah, that wasn't me going, oh, I want this to be sampled and this is the lick I want you to sample. It was just like, oh, this idea inspired this outcome. And that is way better than having to sit there, like, waiting for divine inspiration or something.
That stuff is really good. It's really nice to have those moments in the studio. I definitely have a little bit more of the classical brain when it comes to that. As in terms of recording music, I want the part, right? I want the part to be there. Like, I want the part to be thought ahead, and I don't really want to just ask a musician to come in and just kind of like, well, you're good, so you'll do something good.
You'll do it.
you'll have your feature on this album. And I totally believe in, like, giving that to people. And if I was going to do that, I would just give them a solo. If I wanted somebody to be improvisational and just do their thing, I would literally just give them a solo. But I wouldn't say track on my song, because your note choices are gonna the note choices are gonna affect the whole field. Like, to me, like, the notes, or like the individual notes, to me, are so important. And if there's these like little notes sort of like hanging around in my ear that I wasn't expecting when I wrote the song, it's really gonna, like, throw me off. It's gonna throw off my own listening experience, and all of a sudden my ear is, like, gravitating toward something that's unfamiliar, which I also recognize is not the experience of the listener, because they didn't know what the idea was to begin with. They're only hearing the finished product.
Right.
But it just still doesn't always, like, sit right with me if something wasn't put in there intentionally.
Yeah, that definitely happened during the session. I remember one of the songs, the quality of the dominant chord we kept playing was like a sus13, like, you think of, like, Earth, Wind and Fire, like beginning of September, the do 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 do, like that kind of chord quality. And like, we were having Adam Marth is going to be on the record. We had him play some guitar, and there is one of the takes he accidentally played just a C major instead of the C sus13, and he came back in and he's like, oh, I hit that chord. And we're like, that's fine, you everything else sounded great, so we could just either punch you in, or you could do a whole other take.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, like 99.99% of it. But then there was a disagreement with, like, how people were perceiving it, because some people were like, no, I like that, and we're like, but that's not the chord though. Now you're having the E rub against the F, you're having this, like, more dense chord instead of this more, like, open sound, like, and it 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 was probably like 2 minutes of talking, but it felt like way too long to be like, no, he he played the wrong. Yeah, I'm like, he played the wrong chord. That's fine. Like that's why we have different chords and they're not all the same. Like you can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna play a C7 flat 9, and you're gonna play a C7 with just a natural 9, and it'll be fine. It's like, no, they're different.
That stuff, I don't. Yeah, and I struggle with that because there are always instances in the studio where somebody makes a mistake, but the rest of the take is really good.
Yep.
But somebody makes a mistake like somewhere in the middle of it, and somebody on the other side is saying, hey, I think it works. Right? Like I think like what you played was good and it works for the song. And I'm always like, I'm not trying to make something that just works. Like I'm not that's not what I want to make. I don't want to get by on what I just played. I want to play it correctly. I don't know, but that's my brain. When I'm in the studio, I'm very pragmatic and I'm not like the fun creative thing. I'm like just do it, just play the part. I'm like the Whiplash guy.
Yeah. No, it's like, I wrote this parts for you to play, so play it.
I don't know. I try to give people like a little bit of freedom, but also being in a recording studio makes me a little bit of a control freak.
Well, and
for sure.
And I've learned to find the balance of like, because I like, the thing about recording is having options for down the line. So if like, if there's a written part, which I've been in sessions where it's like, this is the part, do this, and then, oh, well, let's do a take where you're improvising, or let's do a take where you're on a different keyboard instrument and get that color, or let's do a take, where you double the horn line with a synth, like try that. I'm all for like the utility that building a song in the studio, or the utility of having different options in a studio to build a song, rather than, like, I guess if it's a bluegrass tune, obviously I'm not going to play like synth unless they're really like, we want synth.
Yeah.
But but I am, I like when it's like, oh yeah, what if I did double the bass line on a low piano octave? Like that would add a little extra percussive punchiness to it, and a different color that's only there when you blend those two instruments, and maybe that's the right sound. But I also get the part of my classical brain that kicks in is like, okay, there has to be a thing though. Like we can't spend 2 hours on like doubling a bass line. Like there needs to be like, what sounds good? Let's try this. We know what these instruments sound like. That's more final arranging than most of the, I don't know. Because we were like changing songs like the day before we went in the studio and in the studio. So
Mm-hmm.
It's there has that. I have to have the jazz brain be flexible, but then the classical brain be like, no, there are notes that are correct that I need to play and execute with like precision. But
there's definitely an element to accepting mistakes and accepting when things are not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And also accepting improvisation, because a lot of like, oh my gosh, so I just had to learn Waterfalls by TLC, which you can just learn the song, like you can just learn because it's 4 chords, right? You can just learn E flat, whatever it is, I don't remember, but
it's something
off the top of my head. You can just learn the 4 chords and you can play Waterfalls by TLC, or you can learn the transcription of the bass line of TLC because it is incredible. It is an absolutely, and it's improvised.
Wow.
It was a totally improvised bass line, and the guy just nails it. He just absolutely destroys the song. And it's so funky and so exciting. And he was just that good. They were just like, play bass on this TLC record, and he was like, okay. And that sounds easy. It's a 4-chord song. It's the 90s. I'm playing a 5-string, and the song is now nasty. Like, just amazing. And so I don't know. I want like, but I don't want to. Do I want to be that person? Maybe. Because usually if I do improvise something on a bass for somebody, it's happened a couple of times. They're like, come over, play the bass, right? And and we'll listen to it like once or twice, and then I'll play it, and they'll say, that was good, I liked it. Like, I liked what you contributed. I think we're gonna keep it. And my brain goes, I'm not finished yet.
Wait.
But I'm not. I just had this other new idea that I didn't play.
Yeah.
That we need to spend an hour on. I don't know.
Right.
It's nice to have people like it's good to like be neurotic in your own way to get the product that you want, but it's also nice to have people around you that say, I think that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
you did great. You did great. Go take a nap and sit in the sun or something.
Yeah,
like,
eat food. Like
you look stressed.
Yeah, well, and that's what helped having Paul Clemson in there to like, he was just as enthusiastic about the process. It's as if he was our age, in the band with us, and we were just getting to know him. And he was using the engineer brain to kind of help our ideas get tracked more efficiently, because what he noticed, the layering of the music, but also how, effects, like, oh, everything is open to having effects on it. Like, it could be a snare hit, it could be vocals, it could be whatever. So he set up an effect station just on a table. You just took a mixer and ran, like a few lines for like different pedals, synths, different sampler options, the Hannah's, what is it, the SP404A, and then the SPDX drum pad. But then as he was sending all that back into the board, he also did, I think he did just an aux sends channel for just a wet channel. So everything we tracked had a wet channel that he could like manipulate in real time. Cool. So there's, however many dozens of minutes of just like, oh yeah, while you were doing this piano track and the overdubs, I was just messing around with different pedals and textures that you can toss in. And that saved us time, because usually it would be like, oh, we do the thing and then we spend a chunk of time in mixing, trying out different effects, or we, oh, play that same thing you just did, but we'll run it through the pedal board, and then it's, taking time to set that up. Now it's just, oh, it's an always on wet channel that's always going to track, and it adds more tracks to the session, but it adds more colors and options on the fly than just, and I was like, that's so smart.
It's like having a live sound engineer in the recording studio.
Yep.
It's manipulating your sound. Like, wow.
Yeah. So like,
yeah,
it just
another cog in the machine.
Yeah. And very like, little, like with Hannah's tune, it's one we've played before. It's like a song In or Out, and it's like a bluesier, soulful tune. I guess not full leaning into the blues, but like a soulful like love song. It's like, are you in or out? Like, you keep mixed messages. But
do you remember, I don't know if you ever watched I think it was in Aladdin like 2, or something. They had a song called In or Out. Have you ever heard that song?
Yeah, that
It's like a men's chorus song. Whenever I hear somebody say in or out, my brain immediately just goes, "Are you in or out?" It's like jazzy. If you're
yeah.
with me, give a shout. Ah! It's like,
Yep.
sorry, I
Yeah.
don't know. I imagine your song is not like that.
Not men's chorusy.
It's not a cover of one of the songs from Aladdin 2.
The classic Aladdin number.
Yeah.
But well, PK, his suggestion was very simple. It's like, what if, like, since Madison and David were in there, he just did a hybrid brain thought of like, all right, David, you keep the ride pattern going, and then Madison, you just worry about hi-hat, snare, and then dragging the kick on like the fourth beat, and that will be the rhythmic texture for the verses. And we tried it and we're like, oh, it's just different enough where it is different from how we were playing it, and then how even different enough from how we were rehearsing it, but it added a lot of character just from those little changes. It's like, oh, now we're thinking cross brain of what David and Madison were kind of already doing. Like, how do we complement each other rhythmically? PK as a producer was starting to have us think in that mindset with just a simple suggestion. And it's cool when like outside ears can just be like, we'll try this, and you're like, what how did this happen?
And that's something that requires multiple percussionists, right?
Yep.
It would require and that sound, are you ever concerned with, because I hear this a lot from people that are going into the recording studio and they want to like add something to their music that they won't be able to do live, or will be more difficult to do live, and then they get concerned with the audience's perception of the recorded music versus like the live version. Because they get concerned with like, oh, well, I don't want to play live with tracks,
right?
So this like acoustic guitar and synth pad that is in this song is just not going to be there live, for instance.
Yep.
And they get like all concerned about that, like, oh, what will they think?
Yeah, they won't love it.
And that doesn't matter so much to me unless it's a really crucial part of the song, but I'm also not against playing with tracks.
Yeah, I have to always make that concession because there's so many keyboard layers on all of our tracks. It's like I only have two hands and I don't want to have to bring 4 different keys stations and soft synths to like replicate all the textures on the album, because even with 4 keyboards I only have 2 hands. The closest I've seen to somebody doing that recently was Hiatus Coyote's Tiny Desk. Like the keyboard player had like 3 stacked things above a Rhodes, and then like I think just a MIDI piano sitting in like a Spinit piano casing, and then like a Mellotron mini digital synth. And the way the music was arranged, it was like, oh, okay, for this song he's using all these keys, but he's only using this patch to double this part, and then he's only using this texture for this part. Versus how most of the Earth Radio stuff can happen is I'm doing full takes of keyboard instruments, and then we're parsing through the layers after the fact. But we, I think of like After the Plague, the single we put out this year, it's got so many layers that are harder to replicate live. And we have like, we haven't added it to like our regular performing arsenal, because it is like it's definitely a song that was built more in the studio with all the layers. But we do think about how to, what way do we want to replicate it live if we can't do everything that's on the track, what things to pick and choose. And that, it turns into like the fact that every station other than percussion and drums has effects options for texture and for, Hannah's stuff for looping. And that can help get the spirit of those recordings, but we also understand that we're going to be crafting the live experience versus the studio experience. And I know if we were talking about like, yeah, we should do tracks, I'm the one who's going to be setting that up. So I'm like, okay.
So that's a new responsibility.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so now I need computers that can run, and then I could use my XR18 as an in-ears rack, but nobody wants to use in-ears. So I gotta, it's just concessions that are like, if, with every decision, it's not just like, we should use tracks. It's like, now we have to have this at every rehearsal. We have to have, I have to learn, I'd probably get Ableton to like run everything efficiently.
Probably.
Yeah.
And then there's probably a metronome involved, right?
Yep.
And Earth Radio doesn't play with the metronome.
Not like some of the tunes for this record we did click, but live, yeah, it's like anything could happen. We could speed up a thing that wasn't normally sped up. Most of our songs kind of fluctuate tempos and meters. So it's like, yeah, there's going to be, or even just the simple thing of like, is the band energized or tired? Like that'll impact the tempo.
I was watching Earth Radio play at the Listening Lawn at the beginning of the summer. What was that, in June?
Oh yeah,
I think in June was that performance, and I was there with Maggie Heron, and we were commenting on. I was looking at Madison and Justin, and I was like, look, they're not wearing ears. They're not using a metronome. They don't need it. Like they're just that they're that tight. They're that good. They're, and the band's like really tight, and it's awesome to have that freedom to be able to manipulate tempos as you see fit.
Yep. Yeah, because I definitely see, like, we mentioned production value. Like I see the, a keyboard player I follow on Instagram, Kyrie Tyler. He is 1 foot in the contemporary gospel space and 1 foot, producing shows for pop and hip hop artists, producing bands and stuff and arrangements of their tunes with all the like extra hits for the dancers and all the, the light show. And I see like there was a clip of him, I think it was his band, where they like got to the end of a track and they were holding, and the drummer's like doing a cymbal wash, but then in that cymbal wash, the click for the next song is changing. And then he's like already getting it in his head, and then do, like kicks it in seamlessly. And like, that's really cool. And then it's also cool when, we'll morph in and out of a song just because like, like, oh, Justin's pedaling the rhythm for Over Again. We're going to slowly transition into that tune. So yeah, there's fun elements to both. And I do think like, if you're going to have tight production, you're already going to have to be a tight band.
Pretty much.
Like it's hard to,
yeah,
because those tracks will fail. Like you can't just expect them to always work all the time, because you could be in a place where like, oh, is it the Wi-Fi that's affecting it? Like or is it the location, or is it the power, or is it, your computer
power situation? Or does the computer just not want to work today? There's a great chance of that. There's a great chance that your computer will say, nah, I'm tired.
Yeah, I'm not going to open that program you've opened literally every other day of your life.
Yeah, I don't think so. It seems, looks like there's another instance of this program like already running, dude. Sorry, I can't really
It's
help
like,
you
but
out with that. And you're like,
I checked Task
no, it's
Manager.
not. Your computer's just gaslighting you.
Yeah.
Like, no, you already opened that.
It's like,
No,
no,
I
I didn't.
didn't.
That's why I'm clicking on it. And I don't see it in the Task
It's not
Manager.
in the processes anywhere. What have you done?
Yeah. And then, well, and I see people like Anomaly when he was, running his band on tour. They're all like, he even says that there are parts of songs that he doesn't have mapped. So it's like a hybrid, like things mapped to an Ableton session that is mirrored in the rest of the band, and everyone has stuff that relies on the master clock for MIDI and tempo changes and stuff. But then there
Oh,
are times where Anomaly is having to, like, as he's playing, like, oh, this isn't an automatic patch change in the song. This is me having to trigger this, or me having to trigger this effect. So it's almost like a musical where the music is arranged and rehearsed, but then he has different cues as the band leader versus the bass player versus the, like, everyone's kind of working in a different, like, not fully technology dependent setting, but also technology heavy setting.
jeez.
It's like so many ways to put on a show, I guess.
Why do we do this? It's so much work.
Yeah, it's so much work.
Incredible amount of work.
Yeah.
For again, and so this goes back to like spend the money or make the money, spend the money, take the time, and then nothing. Possibly, but not. I mean, just for only from a financial standpoint, because I don't really like. If I do make that thing that I feel really good about, and it does make me, it brings me joy, and it makes me happy, and it makes me feel like this is me and this is my art.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be hugely disappointed about like the dollar sign at the end of it, because I'm still gonna say like, well, as long as I was like happy in the process, like, there's nothing worse than like trying to do the creative thing and make the art that makes you happy, but the process of it is really difficult. Like making that process better for you and for your bandmates, if that's the case, and for the people around you, is like probably, I don't know, 90% of the time gonna lead to that being a better product.
Yeah. It's very rare to have, like, well, I don't know how rare it is. I think of like the current pop climate of like people who have like a whole team behind them to make them into pop stars, and then they just have to show up and do the thing.
And of course there's like James Brown, right, who is probably really mean to his bandmates sometimes. I mean, his band, right? Not even his bandmates. Like, that's a stretch to even call them like bandmates. It's really just like, no, you're just an extension of James Brown.
And he was making most of the money from all the shows too.
Yeah.
And docking pay on stage.
Literally, it was like, you didn't play that good today, so you make less money than everyone else.
Yeah. Like, just that,
like, that's so stressful to create. But then to create this music that is like so impressive and powerful and enjoyable out of that situation.
Yeah. It's interesting to see the people who, I don't know, it's hard to be like super micromanagey and like also, I don't know. I feel like you can, I think of like, like Esperanza Spalding, a lot of her music is very detailed, but there's also a lot of space in it for artistry to kind of express itself from individual players. And I think of like that album that I have the vinyl for. She did an album in like 72 hours, and it was all live streamed, and you
Whoa.
know, like, oh, it's Robert Glasper. He's here at 2 a.m. and we're going to teach him the song as I'm tracking the bass part. And like, she's being super specific of like, you know, she's tracking her part and also being like, and then I want you to kind of like hit this part and then the melody's going to come in. And I'm like, how your brain is like
Esperanza is literally,
7 brains.
her brain is literally like over here. Like, here's the corporeal form of Esperanza Spalding, and her brain is like over here. But this is the one that's controlling the bass, and then this other brain is everything, is the voice and everything else that's going on. It must be separate, and there must be multiple brains.
Yeah,
because it doesn't make any sense how she should be able to think that hard all the time.
Yeah, and like putting out like early in her career, like, here's me doing the classical thing, here's me doing the jazz thing, here's me doing the R&B soul thing, and then to, you know, go like, I'm now in Fusion Town writing about an alternate personality that I've named Emily, and here's a whole album about different body parts that I wrote in a castle, and here's you know, like her latest album came out, and it Formwella, and it's like a song, or it's songs that
I haven't heard
explore. Yeah, it's songs that she wrote with the Songwriters Apothecary Lab, and it focuses on music therapy, but not specifically just like, you know, like, oh yeah, if you teach someone to play guitar, they have that outlet as a human to express themselves and find some joy. It was like getting into the nerdy weeds of it, like the intention behind words and lyrics, the arrangements, you know, like not everything's just, it's a band. It's like some of it's just her and bass, some of it's, you know, like a full band with strings, some of it's just her and another guitarist, and she's not even playing bass, she's on piano. And yeah, just the exploration of like music therapy through arranging and sounds, and she was, I think the lab itself has 3 different locations, and she spent time in all 3 locations working with different artists. But yeah, it's like, I don't know, like the people who are so detailed, like I doubt they take other input, but they might hear it and just be like, cool, let's stick with my idea though.
Great job.
That was a thought, not the right one, but it was a thought. Yeah, and then, you know, conversely, it's like, how much thought is like, I don't know, anyone I say, someone's gonna get mad. So like, how much thought is like Katy Perry?
We
like,
want them to get mad.
Yeah, that's anger drives
mad.
The algorithm.
If you're not mad, you're not paying attention.
Right. You know, like how like Katy Perry's not sitting up late at night being like, what is it, California Girls, what could it be about? It's like,
yeah,
she's already way past that. You know, someone's already written those lyrics for her, she's just performing it, and now she just has to worry about like, all right, I got to work with the choreographer, got to get fitted for wardrobe, I got to start you know, going to meetings about the tour coming up. Like, there's more of the business artistry than like, you know, it's an entertainment thing as much as it can be, have some artistic utility. I don't know, entertainment versus artistry always, you know, you can get like on the extreme artistry end, you get like, you know, like John Coltrane's free jazz era, and you know, like, oh, it's so far removed from what the general populace thinks about music, and only a handful of people are going to latch onto it and find creative meaning in it, versus like, you know, Despacito being streamed like literally, it's streamed so many times that it's like everyone on the planet has listened to it at least once.
Yeah,
like with the metrics, and that's just on
like
YouTube.
like not to hear that song. It's insane.
Yeah, so there's like that broad of an appeal. It's like it's a dance song that it's born out of Latin music dance tradition, but is in the crossover market for American clubs, but is also in a movie. Like, it's just apparently the most universally liked song, according to numbers. But
it's that good, huh?
It's so good.
Well, Joe Biden likes it, so.
I want to find a clip of him saying Despacito. just like unironically.
Yeah.
I like that band, that fella Despacito.
Despacito.
We got a lot of those Despacitos trying to get into our country. That's why I advise to strengthen our borders. It's like, all right, cool.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. The segue.
Yeah, it's always
approachable.
Ever since Pokemon Go to the polls, I've just been like trying to
Pokemon Go to the polls.
Yeah,
quote.
Hillary Clinton said that when she was running, and just like, all right, this doesn't make you cool. Like,
love it. Yeah, I love hearing politicians just prove how out of touch they are.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Pokemon Go to the polls. It's like, all right, I'm not, it's like, do you want people who were going to vote for you now not vote for you because of the cringe? Or it's like, there is a cringe,
I don't think if there was somebody that was, if they were like on the fence, if somebody was on the fence about Hillary Clinton, I don't think that was going to be the deciding.
It's like that does it. I
can't take Pokemon.
Yeah.
I'm a millennial.
Yeah, I've played a little Pokemon here and there.
Yeah.
Ash Ketchum.
Go to the polls.
Yeah. But yeah, in terms of all the projects you do that we mentioned, 10 years ago when this podcast started. The Hackey Turtles, I've seen you with them. Melophobix, I've seen you with them. Have you been rotated into Groove Ground at all? Groove Ground.
I have not yet played with Groove Ground.
Okay, so that's still.
I have not yet done that. And there's another bass player. I can't remember his name. I want to say his name is Jackson, but
okay. Yep.
I can't remember. But I have not. I was going to track a song with Groove Ground last year, and that got that there was a COVID thing that happened, and so I could not go.
Yeah, because I was
to the studio, and that was the day that Daviance called Justin Avdak.
Yep.
And I think you and Justin were at Third Coast.
Yeah. Yep.
At that time,
and it all just came together last minute.
Yep. And then Justin was able to go fill in that spot for me. So I have not yet made the break, but I played a lot with Daviance with the Elijah Russ collective.
Right. That's probably where the crossover brain is thinking.
Yeah. And coming up soon, we're playing an event with Hutch Green as well.
Oh, okay.
So that's a really interesting lineup. And that one is myself with Hutch, Daviance on the drums, Michael Pierce on electric guitar, and Mark Lavengood.
Whoa.
On whatever Mark Lavengood decides to play. I assume some dobro and some steel and maybe some mandolin. And for anybody who doesn't know, Hutch Green is this new country artist persona that I'm a part of, which is Mark Canetz, the singer of the Hackey Turtles, is now doing a country thing.
Cool.
And he's got loads of songs. They're great. And Mark he's an excellent lyricist. And he's getting a lot better at songwriting. Like over quarantine, he really broke into the whole circle of fifths and writing songs and chords and all this stuff. And like what what a certain chord can make you feel and all that type of stuff. And he was able to relate that really well to his own music. And so now he's got this whole new avenue. We shot a Dogtown session recently that's turning out really well.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, that's like, so you have kind of enough like Hackey Turtles being kind of funk, Chili Peppers-esque Michigan rock, and and then Melophobix being like ska funk.
Melophobix
like
is
a blend of things.
I hesitate
I don't know
to call it ska.
It doesn't have
yeah. It is there's a lot of reggae vibes, right? And which is like, okay, so reggae and ska, because originally that's where the ska music comes from,
right?
But
I just always think horns and ska, but that's not
horns,
the right
rock
vein.
music. and also Stefan, the lead singer, you know, kind of sounds like the guy from the Mighty Boss Tones.
Yep.
So are we a ska band? And did they open for Sublime with Rome? I think.
Yep, they did. Yeah.
Like Once Upon a Time. And did they play No Doubt covers? So yeah, the evidence is mounting, but
yeah, I think they used Cage Free Funk as their tag. So no boundaries, but funky.
Yes. So many different sounds that I get to play with. I'm going to be playing with Melophobix a lot less. There's not that many shows coming up, and we talked recently about like moving forward because I still need a full-time bass player.
Yep.
And I've had like a really great year with them. I've played more shows with Melophobix this summer than I did with any of my other bands.
Oh, nice.
Which is really surprising, because for many years past that was like not the case. And I played my first show with Melophobix in 2020, and then I was able to do like another 10 shows with them this year. And we've had some really great concerts, and it's been really fun like getting tight with a new band.
Yes.
And I haven't been able to do that since I joined the Hackey Turtles, because that took a tour in itself in order to get tight with that band. And Melophobix is more difficult. It's the music is more challenging. It's more involved. It requires me to like play faster. Like when we play this like BYOB cover by System of a Down. That one gets that song gets it gets cooking. It's
yeah, all the movement and yeah.
Yeah. But I finally got to a place with them where I like memorized the songs and I memorized the set list, and so now we jam out. We have a lot of fun. We played at the Perrin Backyard Bash recently, and that was one of our best concerts this summer. And then a week before that, we played in Palooza in Lake Orion, and we played right before the Native Howl.
Whoa, that's cool.
The Native, they are so cool. They are one of the coolest bands to come out of Michigan in the last 5 years. Absolutely
awesome. Yeah,
one of the dopest. I was so impressed. I've never seen them live before. I just thought they were tremendous. I was like, I want to open for you. Like, I want it for forever.
Take me on the road. And so those bands, Bedroom Ceilings with Dean.
With Dean Chittenden.
And I feel like there's another one, but I don't know. Maybe that was all of them. Or like, is there two other kind of sometimes projects?
It would be really embarrassing to forget.
I think that covered all of it, but
well, okay. So real quick with Bedroom Ceilings, we have we recorded a new album back in May, and we did that at La Luna La Luna Recording and Sound in Kalamazoo, with Alex Tobin and Maggie Heron.
Nice.
Alex is kind of like our guy right now for all things Bedroom Ceilings. He's kind of like the producer, because he also recorded the previous album, Another Bulb Burned Out, which was recorded in January 2020 and was released during lockdown. And so we have this amazing recording team that's built around Bedroom Ceilings and a really good relationship with La Luna. And now upcoming for our only performance with Bedroom Ceilings that we're doing this year, we have Maggie on electric guitar for this performance, and we also have Adam Danis from Kalamazoo playing bass.
Oh, bass. Interesting.
I know. Uh-huh.
I was gonna say like drum, bass. Oh, okay.
Not on the drums.
Whoops.
Nope. Adam's gonna slay some bass. He's gonna come pluck with us this Saturday.
Nice.
So it's myself and Alec Kleinfelter on the drums from the Patty Prashela band.
Oh yeah, the shirt.
And Dean on vocals and piano, Maggie on guitar, and Adam on the bass.
That'll be a fun band.
We're only playing like a 30-minute set, but we're very well rehearsed for it. And it's been really great to collaborate with some Kalamazoo musicians this year, and it's basically because we recorded that album in Luna.
Yeah,
there's a lot of great players down there.
Yeah, and a lot of great people who, you know, they sneak in to like play that scene, and then they develop something that, you know, like I think of like Jordan Hamilton, or, you know, like a lot of the drummers that come out of Western that go on to like, you know, play in bigger music cities. You know, there's just a lot of like, there's a lot of talent, and I feel like sometimes Kalamazoo gets reduced to like, if you're an audience member, it's like, okay, bells, if you know, beer and shows, or like maybe you know of some of the other venues that are in the downtown area, or you've been to the Kalamazoo theater for like a bigger show once. But yeah, there's so much just like talent and culture. And I think of like the jam sessions that they used to take place for years at the Union before it closed, and now that energy is kind of taken into the Dormouse Theater, which isn't a restaurant, so it's more art focused, and that's a cool like kind of pivot from just like being this awkward stage in the center of a restaurant that some people might tune into, to like being an arts cultivating space.
Dormouse is now, they're doing jazz jams down there on Tuesday nights, I think, and they are exploring more ideas for collaborative musical experiences for the community down there, and I'm really interested to get more into that. I was born in Kalamazoo.
Oh, nice.
So I have like, and I lived in that part of Michigan for the first 10 years of my life. So I was very young when I moved to Grand Rapids, but spending a lot of time down there recently for a number of reasons, you know, music being one of them, has given me like a really good feeling about that part of Michigan and the type of art that is going to come out of that in the future. I think it's really exciting. Yeah,
and it's like, you know, I've met a lot of like, during my time there when I was at Western, like just meeting a lot of players who, you know, obviously there's the skilled technician people, but everybody I met that stuck in my head, they all had a lot of just personality, like a lot of artistry already there, even if they only were like, oh, I'm just a jazz pianist. It's like, nah, you got a distinct character to like what you're doing and how you're performing. Or like a Jordan Hamilton who's like, you know, I'm a classically trained cellist, but I also can rap and sing and loop and and be endearing, and
man, he can play. I loved that that release from Jordan Hamilton, Jared Selner, or Saxsquatch.
Yep.
And The Lasso.
Yeah. Really cool release.
That was released what, like a day or two before Jordan's accident, or it was like very
Yeah,
soon,
very
like not,
recent in that. Yeah,
and it was and I just adored it. I love that record. I think it's one of the coolest, like I don't want to say lo-fi because I don't want to diminish the production of the record, but
right.
one of the coolest like jazz and experimental releases that I've heard in quite a while.
Yeah, and especially like I was talking, I think I was talking to probably the Earth Radio bandmates because I've been seeing them every day the past week pretty much. And uh the fact that it was either them or Steve Leaf, but the lasso is kind of like he's got the aesthetic branding for the artistry really well done, and then like incorporating two other distinct person, like everyone who knows Sasquatch knows like what he's about, how he plays, how he's just, you know, a very like on the ground presence in the DIY scene, but also gets, you know, to do other stuff. And then, yeah, to have like a Jordan Hamilton who's very much, you know, already has his own personality, but also works with Last Gasp, like to have a project come out uniquely like that, where it's not just like, you know, I think sometimes of like jazz focused records where they're bringing other people together and it's just kind of like, okay, these are kind of songs where like, all right, yeah, I've heard him play all these licks before. Like this is cool, but it's just kind of like fan service, or it's, you know, kind of boring or the same. Whereas this project definitely transforms how all three interact and are perceived in a way.
It's so thematic and it's so engaging and consistent and interesting, like the way that the album, just the arc of the record, and I love the name of like magi. I'm not exactly sure how to say that, but just the idea of like that there are these three people that are basically wizards we're talking about, right? That are creating this there's alchemy that's happening, right, in this record. And that's a perfect name for the collaboration because of the way that they speak to each other in the music. And I love how interesting it is to hear the saxophone and the cello almost occupy the same frequency range at certain points in the album, and you kind of like are listening and you're like, which one was that?
What? Yeah.
Whoa.
It's just, yeah, like what am I hearing? That I think of thinking of like, I don't know, I guess it would be under arranging, but just kind of a happy accident if it wasn't intentional. But I don't know if you follow Charles Cornell at all, the YouTuber pianist dude.
Yeah.
He
I liked him better when he was less popular, but yes.
I don't, it's funny because like I found out about him as a meme, and then, you know, then he started doing the educational content, and I'll check stuff out here and there because it's like, oh, I'm a keyboard player, and I almost went to NEC. I think he went to NEC, but might have been New School or no, he was it Curtis? I don't know. He went to a jazz school, but not that NEC is a jazz school necessarily only, but he did a video about how he was like, this chord saved Star Wars, you know, interesting premise.
Yeah, I saw that thumbnail.
The unintentional or potentially intentional thing that they do with like, cause he basically just explains like, oh, the lead up to this moment, and you know, I don't know who's gonna watch this. Spoilers for Rogue Legacy. Spoilers. I don't know if you've seen that movie though, Rogue Legacy, or have? Okay,
no, I haven't. No,
do you not care?
No, I don't. Go ahead.
Okay,
yeah. The Disney Star Wars stuff is fine, but
it's definitely like I'll have to come back to this thought because I was thinking about art prize too. The thought of people seeing themselves in art doesn't necessarily mean it's cool, like the best. Any best is subjective. Like, yeah, art prize is indicative of that. With like one of the popular things is literally just a mirror. It's just like a slanted thing you can see yourself in. It's like, that was my favorite, the thing that had me in it.
I vote for that.
Yeah, I'm voting for me.
Nice.
But I'm sure there's other reasons, but maybe not. But in Rogue Legacy or Rogue One, not Rogue Legacy, Rogue Legacy is a game. Rogue One.
Okay. Well, I have seen Rogue One.
Okay. Yeah, Rogue Legacy was a game I was looking at.
I just trusted
week.
You. I'm
like, a Star Wars.
They made another Star Wars movie with the word rogue in it. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the writer's room.
Well, and there's also like Rogue Squadron, the video game, and I don't know, Rogue. But at the end of Rogue One, like where Darth Vader gets introduced, and it's like they build up the thematic music to a point, and then it gets quiet, and then they land on a G minor. The orchestra lands on a G minor, and then when that chord resurfaces as like the surprise, it's Darth Vader, the lightsaber tone is an E, so it turns it into a half diminished chord. and it's like like, whoa, like thematically, like they took the thing that we all had heard previously and it changed because this very striking moment happened in the canon of the story, which everyone's going to be surprised by, but it's heightened by the musical context. And then
the lightsaber, is it Darth Vader's lightsaber?
Yeah, like when the tone of the it was just like just it's an E, and
whoa,
and it was like, that's crazy. But then
that's sweet.
On top of that, as he starts fighting the people in that spaceship hallway, he's swinging the lightsaber, and the tone of the lightsaber swinging is an F sharp, and the orchestra is in G minor. And then they move the key down to E flat minor because they're trying to do like, moving in thirds is a great way to just like jump from key to key. And they're trying to get back to C minor. So they move to E flat minor, which has G flat, F sharp in the key. So you're hearing this dissonance of like, oh, this thing's happening. And then like he does like a more powerful move and the key changes down. And the lightsaber is now back in the key, and you're like, "What? Whoa. Did they do this on purpose?"
No way!
Like, that's insane. If they like,
did they do it on purpose?
I would have to look it up, but if they didn't, it's the craziest accident.
That's like that. That's a great little insight to cinema like that, and I haven't considered that, but sound editing and all that stuff is really interesting. But in that instance, it would be really funny if they were trying to pitch the lightsaber to go with the score, and then the score was in like a different key, for instance, like say we're talking about like, if it, instead of like G minor, it was in like A minor, B minor, or something like that. And then they tried to like pitch the lightsaber, and everybody was like, lightsaber sounds kind of high. Because F sharp sounds like a good note for a lightsaber. Like I can hear like a nice like little drone over like F sharp. I don't know what, 3 or something,
right?
Like that would like sound pretty cool. But I can also imagine that like hearing middle C on a lightsaber would kind of be like, it needs to be a little more. It needs to be a little more like
deeper and a little bit like not
especially
exact, but
if it's Darth Vader, it should sound like that lightsaber should be more of like an F-150,
right?
Not like a Prius.
You
know what I mean?
It's not a lightsaber butter knife. It's like a full sword.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just the thought of like the arranging of like that. I can't even remember originally why I brought it up. What were we even talking about?
I don't know. We're in the Star Wars portion.
Now we're in the Star Wars portion of the episode.
We were talking about, you were talking about Charles Cornell.
Yeah, and I brought him up.
And his analysis.
Yeah, and then, but before that, we were talking about we were talking about the lasso and how the music is something about like I don't know if it was the cinematicness or I don't know. Something led me to tone. Something led me to arrangements and that movie and that content. Probably tones, and they'll know what they'll make.
So Kalamazoo is cool, and there's a lot of cool art that's coming out of there. I think is what we're.
Yeah, we took the long route. That's what we were
gleaming from this.
Yeah. Go to Kalamazoo, see art. Support artists in Kalamazoo. Support all the things you're doing, all the bands you're in.
Yeah, probably. Looking forward.
If you want.
I'm not playing a lot of. I'm not playing like a lot of concerts. The rest of this year, I would very much like not to play a lot of concerts because I just need the time back. I need time to go into my cave, which is where I'm at right now. I do all my rehearsing in this space, and I can do some home recording and things like that. But I just need the time to like. Yesterday I was going through and I was making this list of like all of these like, these are like songs that I'm like, these are done. And I can record them.
Yeah.
And they've been done for a long time. And now I finally have this, I have an idea of like, okay, so for the next rest of this year, probably into the beginning of February, I have all the time in the world to record 25 songs that I've been meaning to record for the last 3 years.
Right.
And I just haven't done it because either, there isn't enough time, or I'm focused on other things, or I don't have enough money, or anything like that. And now that I'm fed up with telling myself that I don't have enough time or money, I'm just gonna do it.
Yep. Yeah.
Finally. And I'll feel a lot better after it's done. And then I'm gonna feel a lot better about reapproaching the music scene in various parts of Michigan as a solo performer, like as Ben Steer, or as a new pseudonym that I will feel like I'm contributing to my identity as a performer and as a musician in Michigan, which I feel like I haven't been contributing to for like a long time. And there are a lot of songs that I think that I used to play that people would still like to hear. And I just want to kind of remind people that I'm not only a session musician, because that's part of my identity right now, is that I'm like one of the bass players that you can call for a gig around town. And that is hugely helpful. And I so appreciate that. But I also want people to see me as a songwriter.
Yep.
And currently, I don't think that's what it is.
Yeah, I was reminded of that in terms of how people perceive what you do, or sometimes needing to be kind of led to water to drink it in a sense. Like I had two different requests for background music. One client wanted background pop music and the other wanted just background jazz, but both requests weren't from the planner directly to me. It was the planner through a trusted friend in the space to then source talent. And then I connected with them after the triangle established. And you know, one person was like, can you send me like a video of you playing pop music so I can show it to the team? And I'm like, but then why are you even asking for this other person's opinion, who's like this person who I've seen do multiple types of things, and I've known them, and I'm recommending them with my professional opinion? Like, you know, you wouldn't do that with like a plumber. Like, you're not gonna be like, hey, show me video of you unclogging the sink before I hire you to it's like, they're a plumber. That's they should know how to do that. If they don't, then you find that out after you hire them, and then you tell all your friends, and then they don't have business, and then they stop being a plumber, or they get better and they earn the trust of the public again.
They learn something from that.
Yeah, it's like, I shouldn't have to like play a snippet of a Bruno Mars song when you could just look at my website, or, you know, all of the recordings that I list on that, or all the videos I have up. Like, there's anecdotal evidence to the thing you want. And yeah, but some people still, you know, it's almost like asking someone to like you know, like, if they don't have a 3D model of the thing they're going to interior design, like, it's like, hey, can you just redo my room and see if I like it? And then I'll pay you.
And then we'll talk.
Yeah, then we'll talk about the real project, even though the thing I wanted is already done.
Negotiate.
Yeah.
I've been interested in kind of redefining my own musical identity, because I really enjoy playing all these different kinds of music, but there is definitely like certain styles of music that I play that do not define me as an artist. And I would much rather, like, I just can't wait any longer to start being the artist that I want to be. And I can continue being a session player on the side.
Yep.
I can absolutely continue to do that, but it's just like, even in the you know, the Zannies is as close as I came to being able to realize my ideas and my songs, and that was the closest I ever came. And there were still very many things in that group that were unachievable because of the band and because of our situation, and you know, varying commitment levels. How it always goes is like, some people are trying to make career moves somewhere else, and that means they're not spending as much time playing the instrument and rehearsing and growing. And so I feel like I haven't like made, and I'm not I'm not trying to make my magnum opus right away, but I am trying to make something that is very specifically my own music, and I can't settle, you know, I can't settle for that.
Yeah. Well, definitely the right, I feel like the right thing to get into for the fall and winter season, just sinking into the creative cave and doing the thing that's been sitting. I've been thinking that too, of like all the old clips that I had from, you know, in practice rooms, of like, I like this idea, I'll come back to it. And now there's like, you know, 50 of those that I could come back to and see if it sparks a new idea or something.
And it's really scary too, just because there's something about like having the freedom now to, when I was working at Founders, you know, there's 30 hours a week or 34 hours a week that I'm unable to do the craft.
Yeah.
And every time, and like in those hours, like every day I would go to work, there would always be like some hour or some couple of hours while I was working where I was just like, if only, right? Oh, if only I wasn't working at this job in this restaurant, and if only I was at home with my bass, I would be doing what I wanted to be doing this whole time. Like that's what I would be making the art that is going to define me. And then I go home and I don't do it. And I'm like, well, if only I wasn't like working this silly little job,
then I would have all the time to
and now I do have all the time. And it's a slow process. It's still very much like it just occurred to me like yesterday when I was sitting, I finished a rehearsal yesterday and I was just kind of sitting there for a little bit thinking like, oh, I have some house projects. Like I could hang a shelf here and I could put some more art and I could do some chores and things like that. And I thought, or I could write the music that I've been telling myself I was going to write when I had the time for the last 3 years.
Yeah. There you go.
And I started.
I'm starting to do it.
And I'm doing it now. And it is it's harder than I thought. But it's also like it's very liberating. For a very, very long time, I have always wanted to just be absorbed in an art project, whether that be a visual art project or a musical art project. And I used to be really good at it. I don't know what happened, but like when I was 17, 18 years old and I was living with my parents and I didn't have all these responsibilities, I would just go to the basement and then 5 hours later I would come up and I'd be like, Mom, I wrote a song and recorded 4 parts for it. Here it is.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be that good, but geez, I made like a whole song.
Yeah.
I could easily do that. I'm more equipped than ever to do that. But unfortunately, there's more to it than just
making music in the basement.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Now I have to make music on the ground level where there's light.
Yeah, I have more responsibility. There are windows now that people can see my art in process.
And I can witness the passage of time while I am working, which is horrifying.
Yeah, just like it was sunny when I started.
No, it's dark.
It's snowing. It was just summer. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that too. Yeah, well, you definitely, we'll all, I'm sure, keep an eye on just like updates of like, hey, I made a thing, and then share it out into the ether and celebrate the progress.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this was a great chat. It was good to finally just sit down and chat.
I'm glad this worked out. Yeah, I've been standing the whole time, but
right. Yeah. No, you're just really, really tall.
It's been good to stand up and chat. Yeah, this is really fun.
Yeah, where should people find all the things, the bands, the places? Is it all in one spot? Is it in 12 spots? I'm going to put links, so whatever you want people to know about.
Yeah, well, my personal Facebook page is where I drop a lot of information about what I'm doing. And then there's also my Instagram, Bass with Ben, which I don't update that a lot. And a lot of what I do is just technique and playing and stuff like that. And it's not as much about promoting what other bands that I'm in. But I do have presence on the Bedroom Ceilings Instagram, and I have presence on the Hackey Turtles Instagram, of course. And you can see me live at any of these concerts that are coming up, which again is mostly promoted on my personal. I guess I have a TikTok, but I don't do a whole lot with it. That's at Viper Bowstring if you're interested in the TikTok content. But
yeah,
that's mostly goofing off anyway.
Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah, definitely folks will go check those things out. And yeah, thanks again for hanging out and chatting. I'm going to go probably eat food before I go get a massage, which will be a nice, relaxing afternoon.
That sounds great. I'll toil a little bit and then I might make some food.
Yep.
Yeah. We'll see.
Toil and food.
Yeah. I've got 3 concerts in October that are important. October 15th with Hutch Green at Sullivan Field in Grand Rapids. October 20th in Ann Arbor at the Blind Pig with the Hackey Turtles opening for the Red Knot Chili Peppers, and then the 21st in Grand Rapids with the Red Knot Chili Peppers as well. Another show with the Hackey Turtles. And then after that, nothing, and just streaming, and I'm gonna like play for tips and stuff like that, and just work on the recorded stuff, and then emerge next in 2022 and just drop singles all over the place.
Just fired them off. Yeah. Well, awesome. Yeah. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'm sure we'll chat again at some point in the future.
Thanks, Dutcher.
Hey, everyone. So I'm going to record the outro while he's gone. So if you... and by gone, we're taking a small pause, but you wouldn't know that because I'll have edited around it. But thanks so much for listening to Mitten Backstage. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can find all of the details about the podcast online. You can go to patreon.com/Dutcher Snedeker again to support directly all the podcasting efforts. DutcherSnedeker.com for everything else. And yeah, we'll see you next week for an episode of Mitten Backstage. We're back and better than ever. See you next time.